Okay, we're here. I hope everything is working. It looks like we are all live. I've got everyone in the room with me and we're live on Facebook, I hope. So I'm Terry Vanover. I'm a divorce strategist and I help you come through divorce without being legally, financially, and emotionally devastated. But just as importantly, I help you to heal from toxic relationships so that you can transition confidently into that next phase of your life. And I'm so happy to be here with you today. We've got some great questions. I've got some great announcements that I'm excited about. So we're going to dive right in today. We had someone ask me about being a stay-at-home parent, and the other partner is requesting, in this case, he asked about alimony and child support and those types of things. So there's no guarantee in this, and you know that I've heard, you've heard me say that, if you can negotiate through the process, that's always the best way. You don't want strangers making decisions for your life unless you really, really have to go that route. So when it comes to mediation, you want to be thinking about, or in terms of divorce, if one of you has been a stay-at-home parent, they take that into account. They take in your income, your spouse's income, and they put that together. And then they decide on the parenting time. So it depends on how much parenting time you guys decide to go with as to who receives child support, who pays the other child support, if spousal support is necessary in that regard. In some states there isn't even any alimony anymore. So it really depends on your state, and it really depends on they take into account both partners' income levels and education levels and factors like that to determine what spousal support will look like, what child support will look like. But you have to understand what the parenting time is going to be like as well. If it's 50-50, that's going to impact someone who has 80-20, right? That's a whole different thing. So the first thing that happens in the divorce process is parenting time has to be determined first, and then all the financials are based off of that, secondary to that. So I think the key here is, and I see this often with divorcing couples, is often one person is saying a bunch of stuff, and they're saying, this is going to happen, I'm going to ask for this, and I'm going to take all the money, and I'm going to take all the house, and da da da. And so it's really important that you not get caught up in that, and you educate yourself on this process so that you know what you're entitled to. And minimum contact with the spouse if this person is causing trouble or continuing to threaten you or anything like that. You want to kind of, I think so many people get caught up. It's a very, very scary time. And so many people get caught up when their ex is telling them things, and saying, I'm going to do this and this is going to happen. And when you've never been through anything like this before, it sounds realistic, or your fears get amplified by a really, high conflict person. So it's really important that you understand and educate yourself on what you're entitled to. And talk to divorce professionals so that you get a sense of what's realistic and what's not. So that's what I would suggest you do, is educate yourself on the process in your state, and educate yourself in figuring out what it is that you want with the parenting time, because the parenting time is going to dictate child support and things like that. So, and I think it sounds like what really needs to happen is stop listening to the ex, because oftentimes they get into our head and they scare us and they frighten us and they make us think the worst is going to happen. And if you understand, really what's really going to happen is this, and this, it brings you a sense of peace. So it's really important that you kind of let go of the noise from your ex and really work on, you know, talking with professionals and people who can really guide you through this process more effectively. So, all right, and I'm getting a thumbs up here in the Zoom room. I've never seen that before. This is exciting. So this is very good. Okay, awesome. I'm glad it's working, although I can't see what's going on Facebook. So if you're in Facebook watching me, hi, I've got some questions written down here and I'm going to be answering them. So, you know, if you haven't heard my story and why I do what I do, I went through a terrible divorce myself. And you know what, Jim, I was probably a lot like you, like listening to my ex. I was, you know, it was just overwhelming time. And, you know, my ex was not at his best at the time. I was not at my best. I'm sure we were both making pretty, you know, stupid decisions at that time. And I tell you, I made every mistake that you can go through when you're going through a divorce. I didn't educate myself. I didn't get support. I didn't talk to lots of people. I didn't try other means before getting a divorce, as far as like using an alternative, you know, didn't even know that there were options to a traditionally litigated divorce. So it really makes it difficult when you don't really have an understanding or a grasp of the process to make good decisions. So I came out of it and I look back because, you know, not only was I going through a divorce, but I lost my mom. I lost my health because I was hit by a van. I was homeless because of the financial decisions I made. So then I lost all my credit. It was just like one thing after the other. So when I say I made every mistake that you can make, I made a lot of mistakes. So I came out of it and I was like, oh my God, there's got to be a better way. There has got to be some help or some support for people who are going through this. And so I decided, you know, I wanted to help people navigate this process more effectively and you know, let go of the fear and let go of the pain and learn how to come through this process, and not only, you know, just get through the process okay or better than okay, but heal from a relationship that took its toll on you. Because what I learned after going through this myself and becoming a stepmom and things like that, and started to, you know, learn from other divorced people, 70% of second marriages also end up in divorce. So it's really important that you not only like understand this process, you work on yourself throughout this process so that you don't go into the next relationship and make the same mistake again. So I became very passionate about helping people, give them the resources, give them the tools, give them everything that they need to come out of this process better than when they got married, you know? So that's really my mission. So the reason why I'm asking the next two questions kind of together is because they're interrelated. So I know in this group, we talk about boundaries all the time. Healthy boundaries, healthy boundaries, healthy boundaries. You hear me talk about it all the time. And why do we need healthy boundaries? And how do you get healthy boundaries? And what does a healthy boundary look like? Blah, 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 right? So I want to talk about the phrase like nice guy versus good guy. So if you've been in our group, you know how I talk about the nice guy versus the good guy. The nice guy has a wonderful heart, but does not have good boundaries. And he overgives and doesn't know when to stop and sacrifices himself for other people. A good guy is got a great heart, but stands up for himself, has the confidence and the security within himself to know what his limits are and not to overgive, doesn't get taken advantage of. So that's the difference. So when we talk about boundaries and how to create boundaries, it's a 3-step process, but I'm going to talk about why people fail to do this, okay? So the first step in creating a healthy boundaries is defining the boundaries. The second is communicating the boundaries. And the third step is upholding the boundaries. So I was talking with my client earlier this week, and we've been doing a lot of inner work on his boundaries because, guess what? This divorce is just one in a pattern that he's had. The two other significant patterns he's had in his life, guess what? The women cheated on him. So he's totally in this nice guy syndrome. He thinks that if he could, his whole thing is being a savior and save these women. It makes him feel good about himself, right? So today, when I was talking about or thinking about doing the boundaries, he came to my mind because when we were doing our work together, and we've been doing a lot of inner work on self-worth and speaking up for himself and things like that. You know, it's not only just in your intimate relationships, but we set out a plan for him to set up the healthy boundaries with his family members. Some of his family members, I think I used the term, were inserting themselves into his divorce process. And so, you know, we developed a plan for him to, the first step was him to define what's acceptable for you and what they say about your relationship with your ex-wife. What's acceptable? What are you willing and not willing to accept, right? So we defined the boundaries. So let me tell you, if there's any ambiguity in your life, it's not a great place to be. Energetically, your energy just leaks. You don't feel strong and powerful. So it's really, really important that we set intentions and we get really, really clear on everything we say and everything we do. So his first step was defining the boundaries, right? So what's acceptable for your family members to say about your divorce and what's not. And then the second step is communicating them in a firm and loving manner, right? Setting boundaries can be loving, right? When we tell our children no, we're not doing it to hurt our children. No is an act of love. No is love, because you're protecting your children, right? When you tell no, don't touch that hot stove. No, don't touch that electrical. No can be an act of love. So if you think of it in that, and it can be an act of love for yourself, setting the boundaries for yourself to protect yourself, right? So, and then third is upholding those boundaries. And here's where it's going to get a little bit sticky, because most of the time, unless you've done the inner work, you're going to fall right back into the patterns when someone pushes your boundary. Unless you've done the inner work to know that you are worthy, to know that you are valuable, you just end up allowing, and again, and I also think it's that leaky energy where you haven't been real strong in your definition. But you're going to allow people to push your boundaries, and it starts with small steps. And what was amazing when we were looking back, at his relationship with his ex-wife, when they were dating, there was a significant moment where he had dismissed kind of a red flag about her being present for him, about being committed and being present during a really, really dark time in his life when he needed her. And I think at the time he dismissed it. And, you know, and I told him, I was like, people show you who they are early on. You need to judge people by their actions, not by their words. So she may have been telling him, I'll be there for you, I'll be there for you. But the truth was, she wasn't there for him during a really dark time in his life. And I believe that people show you who they are early on, and it's up to you to love yourself enough to uphold the boundary. So when someone doesn't show up for you, let's use his example, right? When someone doesn't show up for you in a time of need, there you go. You have the data, right? So it's up to you to say, you know what, this person really is not committed or able to give me the kind of time that I deserve in a relationship. And I had that with another client too, who's in my program, and she was dating a guy, and he, big talker, says he's aligned with her, because her thing is she's worked with me with some time, actually for some time, and we have clearly defined out her boundaries. And for her, time is a big commitment to the relationship. She's not looking for just someone who's just wanting to have fun. For her, she needs someone who is committed to spending time with her, you know, and she's laid that out twice a week. I think that's a pretty appropriate amount of time if you're going to be in a committed relationship. So for her, and actually it doesn't even matter what I think, right? It's about what her needs are and what she thinks. So she has a very defined, I need, you know, twice a week amount of commitment of time for my life that fits for me. And do you know that every time that they got into the relationship with this guy, every time he'd always have an excuse or something would come up, or, you know, so, and I'm like, well, okay, hon, you've got your data, you know, and I tease her a little bit because I call her a data collector. How much more data do you need? He's shown you who he is. He says one thing, but he's showing you another, because that's another thing people mistakenly do when they're dating people. They go by the feelings. He made her feel so good when they were together. He made her feel so great. He made her feel so comfortable. She could be herself. And that's a whole other issue about don't date people based on how they make you feel, because feelings are fleeting. Look at how they behave. Do their words meet their actions? And in this case, it wasn't. He was saying, I'm committed, I'm going to spend time with you, and his actions were not aligning with that. And luckily she's gone on, and it's pretty amazing. But you know, so it's really, really important that we understand that people show us who they are early on. It's up to us to heed what you see, right? So let's talk about how the boundaries, right, and not upholding the boundaries, right? So she's been able to uphold the boundaries with this guy, because before she worked with me, she said, I would have kept giving him chance after chance after. I was like, yeah, because you're a data collector. How much data do you need? You know, I'm like, yeah, 2 strikes, you're out. I don't need a lot of data. I'm good. Like, I see you, like, it's over. So, but, you know, and I was like, okay, that's an old pattern. You collect data. You've got your 2 pieces of data, like, let's move on, right? Because I believe that people show you who they are early on. Believe them when they show you, right? So I want to go into the next part, right? The reason why so many of you struggle with not only defining those boundaries, communicating those boundaries, and upholding those boundaries, is because you haven't done the inner work to value yourself before other people. So you have to love yourself in order to be able to stand up for yourself and say, you know, this is not acceptable treatment for me. Or know yourself enough to know what is important to you, what are your non-negotiables, and know yourself so that, and love yourself so that you feel worthy of speaking up for yourself, and that you are as important, your time, your needs, your desires are as important as anyone else's. So, you know, someone in the group was talking about he doesn't even know what the meaning of self-love is. So this is the definition of self-love, of putting your needs and, you know, your desires, not sacrificing that for other people. And the reason why you're doing that is because you're secretly getting approval, and you may be unconsciously doing this, seeking the approval from others or seeking validation from others, because deep down, you don't really value yourself. You don't really love yourself. So you're seeking that external validation. And, you know, I always say you can't fix internal problems with external solutions, but that's what most of us do. That's what I was doing. I was looking for attention from men because I didn't love myself. I didn't value myself. I didn't really like who I was. But if someone else told me I was attractive or smart or funny or whatever, that meant a lot, and I just soaked it up. So if we are seeking validation from others, and we're you know, it's almost like we're like emotional vampires, right? You're sucking that out of someone else. But when that person takes their love away or takes their approval away, it leaves us void and empty inside. So you have to do the inner work on yourself so that you love yourself and value yourself, so that you can stand up for your boundaries, right? Because here's the thing, oftentimes people don't even communicate their boundaries because they're afraid, oh, I might hurt someone's feelings, or that person won't like me anymore. Well, you know, we need to be authentic and we need to be honest. Otherwise, we're showing up in the world in an inauthentic way, and that's kind of manipulative. And so we need to show up authentically as ourselves and being honest. I want my husband to be happy and I want his needs to be met. I don't want him to be doing things in the relationship just to please me. It undermines the relationship and it undermines who we are as a full couple in the relationship. So it's important that you speak up for yourself and uphold those boundaries. So I have a client who's in my program, and he's actually a very new client, and it's, my goodness, I think I counted back, and it was only 5 weeks, and I have been completely impressed with what he's doing, with the work that he's accomplished in such a short time. And he came to me with such low self-worth. And how did it manifest? It manifested in a relationship with his children, who are adults, and his wife, they're in the process of a divorce. And he was not authentic as himself in that relationship. He didn't show up. He didn't speak up. He wasn't the leader in the family and showed up as the leader for his children. And what he's learned in just these 5 weeks of finding his self-worth and getting to the root of where that lack of self-worth began, and in a sense reparenting himself on that, is he's showing up differently. He was telling me this week how, oh my God, I know it's just a shift, but it's monumental. He would use work as his way of getting validation. So he was a workaholic, right? And I'm sure there's a lot of men out there that use work because it's where you feel empowered, it's where you feel confident. But if you're using it as an external source to make yourself feel good, that's a temporary fix, right? If you lost your job, you would go tumbling down the hole. And if you're using your intimate relationships to fill that void, when she leaves you or you divorce or she cheats on you, that's going to leave you with a huge void. So you have to love yourself first. And he said to me, can't believe it. I'm setting up boundaries at work. I'm telling people, hey, that's not my job, because he's a bigwig, he's a leader, and he's starting to show up as a leader, and he's starting to put up boundaries, and people who are coming to him with stuff that's not of his concern, and he's saying, in a nice way, but that's not my department. And I was like, isn't that amazing? You're going to show up so differently. There's no ambiguity within him. People can look to him as a leader and respect him. And because he's honoring his word, they know where he stands. His boundaries are not like, they're not, for some people, he said before, he'd make exceptions, and others and I'm like, now he's standing in his truth, and he's being himself, and he's standing up for himself and the company and the other people. And I said, that's what a true leader does. And what he also said was, not only have I shifted in being more powerful at work, but I'm more present in my relationship and with my children, because he would have used work to fill that need. But now that he has found his own worth and his own validation, it's okay for him to take a day off of work and to spend it with his children. That's okay. And he feels so much more content and at peace because it's coming from within and not from without. So I think that has been the most powerful shift. And to see people transform in front of my life, in front of my eyes like this, it is amazing. And so if you don't love yourself, I want to say, good for you for acknowledging that and becoming aware of it. Now you've got to do the work to value yourself and love yourself. That's the hard part, and it's so worth it though. Like I said, like your work, your professional life changes, your relationships. He said, you know, I had a big talk with my parents, and I was like, holy cow, you know, this is amazing how you are showing up as yourself in these relationships. It's just amazing, and doesn't feel the need to cower down anymore or not speak up. And I mean, and when I say speak up, I mean in a kind way. This is not like, you know, oh, I'm like this angry man. It's just speaking his truth and being himself and not pretending to be something that he's not to get the approval of someone else or for fear of making someone angry or anything like that. And he's showing up differently, and the things around him are changing. So it's been an amazing thing to witness. So if you know, want help on feeling valued, learning to love yourself so that you can show up differently and breaking your negative relationship patterns, I want y'all to come to my workshop Saturday the 14th. It's a 2-hour deep dive where we are going deep, deep, deep into all this stuff, how to create boundaries, what is preventing you from sticking to those boundaries, how to love yourself, right? I'm going to dive deep into some more steps into loving yourself so that you can show up differently into these relationships and things. So I'm just going to check the chat and see if anyone here has any questions before we head off today. I appreciate y'all coming. I don't know if I should be checking my phone, but I will just in case. So anybody have any questions about boundaries or self-worth or being a stay-at-home parent and like how to manage that while going through divorce? I know it is a lot. Okay. All right, I don't see that. Okay. Good. I'm hoping the people that I tagged in today's live today will join us, or at least come back and see this, because I think this is really, really important. And I think we need to start this conversation with men, and men owning their worth and owning their value. And I mean, in a way where you show up authentically. And it's very empowering, and you'll empower yourself, but you know, you empower your partner as well. It doesn't have to be where one is up and one is down, right? When we show up as who we truly are, we can build a foundation of authenticity, not a foundation of like, oh, I'm doing this to please her, or I'm, you know, giving up this for him or anything like that. We want to show up as ourselves, and people will respond differently. And here's the other thing, there's consequences for not showing up as yourself, because, and that's the other thing that we've talked about when my client, well, both clients that I was talking about today, when they would show up and like give away too much, give up too much of themselves, keep giving and giving and giving and not getting back in return, or showing up inauthentically. What also happens is that you begin to become resentful. You become resentful with the other people around you, and you start to take it out on them. Sometimes it's passive aggressively, sometimes more aggressively. So not only do you resent them, but you begin to resent yourself, and it also cycles into more shame. All right, so it's this whole shame cycle, which then again, you don't feel good about yourself, so you need more external validation, and so it's just this shame cycle because you're not standing up for yourself and you're not valuing yourself. Oh, okay. Yes. Okay. So someone said, yeah, I became resentful. Someone on our chat is like, yeah, I became resentful. It was a cycle. Yeah, you become resentful and then it just feeds on itself. And I will tell you, and I work with a lot of people, and resentment is the #1 relationship killer. Once that resentment sets in and you can't let go of the resentment, you can forget the relationship is over. I really do believe that. And I think that's what happens with people. They come to a point where they can't overcome the resentment, They can't overcome the resentment. And so, you know, it just feeds on itself. So forgiveness is a big part of relationship work. Showing up as your authentic self is a big part of the relationship work. And also showing up as your grown up, healed self, and not that wounded little boy that's looking for validation, or that's looking to like, that's in that relationship not out of a fear of abandonment, but because they want to be there, they desire to be there, and it's an equal partnership. So it's very complicated. Maybe next week we need to do a whole thing on like fear of abandonment, because that's a really good one, and how that affects the relationships that we're in. So I want to thank y'all today for joining me. Look for the replay, and please, 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 I'm going to post the link if I did not. I hope I did. No, I did not. Okay, so let me get the link, because I'm going to be posting that on our workshop. So if you have not signed up for our How to Heal Your Anger so you can let go and move on past your divorce. And by anger, I mean, we're talking about bitterness, pain, hurt, heartache, resentment, all that stuff. We want to let go of all that stuff. So join me in my workshop. It's going to be a 2-hour deep dive, and it's on November 14th from 10 to noon Central Standard Time. So please, please, please join me, and I will be posting the link right after this, okay? All right, y'all. I will see you later. Thank you.